Our next speaker is a senior scientist and rice breeder, biofortification lead of the Healthier Rice Program of the International Rice Research Institute, or IRRI. He is from Australia and spent much of his career developing rice varieties for the rice industry in New South Wales and Northern Victoria. As IRRI's representative in South Korea, he conducted breeding related to research focused on developing varieties suitable for temperate rice production environments. And during this time, he also coordinated the activities of the Temperate Rice Research Consortium. He has a particular interest in developing highly productive varieties while matching grain quality to market requirements. His current focus is making rice more nutritious through biofortification using conventional plant breeding to improve zinc content and transgenic approaches to improve zinc, iron, and vitamin A content in rice. Today, he will talk about the golden rice experience, and let us all welcome Dr. Russell Reinke. Dr. Russell, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, and I just need to choose the screen to share. So I need you to confirm that you can both hear me and see the screen that I'm presenting.
Confirm.
Okay, excellent. All right. Now, I think we're running a bit behind time, so I'll need to move as quickly as I can through this. But look, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you today about agricultural innovation for improved human nutrition and health. And I want to place this in the context of a need to feed a rapidly increasing population to provide not only food security, but also nutritional security to nourish the human capital of the world. So I'll give you an update on golden rice, but also I want to note that the development of high iron and zinc rice I would regard of equal importance with golden rice, because this paves the way for the development of a product that contains all three improvements in all three of those micronutrients simultaneously. So, gosh, sorry, I seem to have gotten this a bit out of order. But anyway, this is just the story of the global population increase. And the numbers are quite staggering, really. Another 1.2 billion people by 2030, according to whatever population projections that you look at. And of course, a significant area, a significant number of those, the increase in population will occur within Asia. So of course, our CG system, which is a network of international agricultural research institutes around the world, it'll maintain its focus on improving productivity, but we also need to pivot to improving nutrition as a key driver of health and well-being. So food and nutritional security remain very important issues globally in 2021, and you would think that we would have solved many of these problems by now, but unfortunately there are still 2 billion people suffering from micronutrient malnutrition. And one of the terms that we use to describe this is hidden hunger, because it's not always immediately obvious that people are malnourished. But of course, the lack of these micronutrients has a significant impact, because whilst many people have enough energy for their food, they lack the nutritional balance that is required for adequate development, but also maintenance of good health. And the current pandemic really underscores the need for us to make food more nutritious, because for many people, their incomes have been significantly reduced, and less income means a much less diverse diet, and that is coupled with being less nutritious normally. So we really need to transform food systems so that we get nutrient-rich staple foods that have to meet three criteria. They need to be available, they need to be accessible, affordable, and desirable for all. So, of course, I need to talk to you a little bit about golden rice. And to those of you who've heard all of this before, I apologise. But it is worth just telling you that what we've done with golden rice is added in just 2 genes. And they're listed on the bottom part of that slide: phytoene synthase from maize and phytoene desaturase from a common soil microorganism. So those were the 2 genes that were linked into a construct that was introduced into rice via the agrobacterium that Dr. Oldemita was talking about. So what this does, these 2 enzymes give the rice grains the capacity then to finish a particular biochemical pathway, which leads to carotenoids being produced in the grain. And one of those carotenoids, the major form of them, is beta-carotene. And what happens is that as we consume that, beta-carotene is converted into vitamin A in the body as it's required. So it's an incredibly safe way of improving vitamin A status in populations that are deficient. And as noted there, our research indicates, and we haven't done feeding studies yet on golden rice because we've been working on getting all of the regulatory approvals, but if people simply replace their rice consumption with golden rice, then all of our calculations indicate we can provide 30 to 50% of the estimated average requirement, which is a measure of how much is needed in a particular population. So I seem to have my notes out of order here, but anyway, I do apologise for that. Oh dear. Just a little bit about the estimated average requirement. It's the level at which the nutritional needs of half the population are met. So it's actually a measure of what's required. And so I think the important thing here is to focus over here on the right-hand side of the screen that shows that the population may well sit here where most people have enough of the element to be sufficient for it, but there's this tail of the population that is at risk, okay? So if we can provide, even if we don't provide all that's required, if we can provide a proportion of what's required, we shift that whole distribution to the right, and we have the potential to bring millions of people into sufficiency for that particular trait. So our methodology for calculating this, I'm not going to go through this in detail, but this just goes you through the steps in the process as we move from milled rice. And of course, there's some losses that occur across the storage of milled rice. We measure what proportion are useful. We know how much is lost in cooking, and we also calculate how efficiently and effectively it's converted to vitamin A in the body. And that's how we base all of our calculations for this. So that's a worked example there. And again, that simply shows that, that with all of our calculations, we can meet between 30 to 50%. So in this particular calculation, you can see on the right-hand side that we calculate we can meet 42% of the estimated average requirement for children 1 to 3 years old. And it's incredibly important that children get adequate nutrition for their developmental purposes. So vitamin A is critical to proper functioning of the immune system. And even at subclinical levels, it can have an impact on how long it takes to recover from a disease. So here we are with golden rice status, and as Dr. Oldemita indicated, we are so pleased that we've finally achieved full regulatory approval for golden rice in the Philippines. And it has been a relatively lengthy process. So the key messages here are that the yield and the agronomic characteristics are exactly the same for golden rice as for its parent variety, and we can meet our nutritional goals. Golden rice, though, is not just one variety. It's a number, it can be bred into any number of varieties. And I would argue that it's really critical that we maintain a good relationship with the breeding programs that operate not only at IRRI in the Philippines, but also within our national partners as well, so that we can actually introduce the golden rice trait or any other biotech trait into the absolutely best backgrounds that are available. And that's going to be critical in the future. The management in terms of farmers when they grow golden rice will be exactly the same as it is for existing varieties. There's no need for more fertilizer. They don't need to do anything differently. And in fact, you wouldn't be able to tell driving past the crop whether it's golden rice or not. The only thing that we require of farmers is that they deal with it carefully after harvest, just to ensure that it maintains its integrity, so that it doesn't get mixed with other grains, and so that it can actually meet the nutritional requirements. And so down the bottom of the slide here, we just talk about that the price will remain the same. That's really important because our focus is on those who can't afford a healthy diet. And then if we simply replace what people are normally eating with golden rice, then we can meet those nutritional requirements. So I mentioned to you right at the outset that we've also got high iron and zinc rice waiting in the wings. And this is also another critical intervention, a new innovation that we can bring with biotech. We can do some things with conventional breeding to improve the zinc status in particular. Iron status, not so much, because most of the iron is held in the bran layer that surrounds the rice grain, and that's effectively removed when rice is milled. But we've found a transgenic way of introducing some new genes, some ferritin genes, that can actually increase the amount of iron in the white rice grains after it's been milled. And so this is just an indication of the first publication of the biofortified high iron and zinc rice meeting its nutritional goals. And so we're working hard to achieve regulatory approval for high iron and zinc rice as well. So in terms of our future plans for healthier rice, well, I think the need is certainly still there. We hear occasionally, and certainly from our opponents, that the need is no longer there, so let's not worry about golden rice. And yet, sadly, I think that the current pandemic really highlights the need for us to improve food nutritional quality. And I think the need is there actually in quite a number of countries. And so we have an opportunity wherever a significant amount of rice is consumed. And obviously, in order to be successful with this, we need to have a country in which there's a functioning regulatory system, because it's really important when we're dealing with these fundamental changes that we abide by the rules and regulations that have been set down to ensure safety. And so I believe that that's a really important thing to do, not because I think anything is inherently unsafe, but because I respect the right of people to know what's in their food, and for us to have met all of our regulatory obligations to demonstrate safety of the food. Now, I think what the future holds for us, though, is to build in not only added nutrition, but also farmer-friendly traits. And I'll show you a couple of those. Dr. Aldemita already talked about this a little bit, but one of the suggestions that I have is that we should be combining improved nutrition with nitrogen and water use efficiency, and perhaps salt tolerance as well. So things that give the crop an ability to withstand environmental stresses, also disease, or to use nutrients more effectively. So I think that's one potential. So in moving through to finish up what I'm saying, now this is a very dense slide, but the critical issue here is, as I mentioned before, biotech is a wonderful innovation. It gives us the opportunity to, in a very precise manner, change specific genes or a few genes by either introducing them, or with gene editing, we can either up or down regulate genes. And so I think there's a lot of exciting opportunities there, but these all must be built on the best varieties that are emanating from breeding programs. Now, breeding programs assemble all of the genes that are required for success in a particular environment. And so that's complex, right? There are many thousands of possible combinations, and I think conventional breeding remains critical, and that our biotech innovations need to be built as decorations, if you will, additional benefits that can be married to existing varieties. And so here in this slide, I guess the bottom line is I'm emphasizing the importance of classical plant breeding, conventional plant breeding, so that we can build our advantages onto those. And I'm arguing that we need constant support for those programs as well. I lived through a time in Australia where there was a huge swing towards biotech as being the answer for everything. And that actually diverted resources away from our conventional program. And I would argue that's not the way to go. I believe we need to support both simultaneously, but ensure that there's really tight and effective linkages between the two, so that the breeders will talk to the folks who can do the biotech innovations, and we work in concert to produce important innovations to feed an increasing world population. I finish with this slide, which is my absolute favorite slide of all time, and that's to remind us of the reasons that we're undertaking this research, which is to improve the nutritional outcomes and get happy and healthy children. So one from the Philippines here and one from Bangladesh, but that applies equally to every country for which improved nutrition is required.